Every television lineup needs a ring announcer. In Hisense's crowded 2025 lineup, that job falls to the U75QG. On paper, it screams excellence. 4K at 165Hz gaming on all 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, 1080p at 288Hz, a VA panel flanked by 1800 full-array local dimming zones on the 65-inch model, and marketing chatter about up to 3000 nits. That number is real. But great televisions are born from balance, not just extreme proficiency in one aspect of image quality. So how does this one fare overall? Hey there, I'm Alex from RTINGS.com. We measured, calibrated, and gamed on the 65-inch U75QG for weeks, and here is the story, free from marketing fluff. Let's tackle this TV's most noticeable feature, its HDR brightness. Strap in, folks, because this one is bright. We're not joking. Set the U75QG to filmmaker mode, disable dynamic tone mapping, feed it a 2% test window, and you'll see a blistering 2564 nits. Widen the window to 10%, and the peak climbs to 2925 nits, one of the highest figures we have ever logged for a mid-priced LED TV. Even at a punishing full-screen white pattern, the set still musters 757 nits. And guess what? It maintains it. Take out your sunglasses, slather on the sunscreen. This thing burns. Impressively, switching to game mode barely changes the story. The 2%, 10%, and 25% windows all land close, if not identical to, the filmmaker numbers. We don't know what Hisense has been feeding this thing, but clearly it's working. Some of you ratings veterans might be hearing that and thinking, alright, yeah, cool, but there's always a price to pay when a mid-tier TV excels at one spec like that. Let me guess. Its contrast is unimpressive. Well, my dear veterans, you'd be wrong. Sure, without local dimming, the TV has a 45:22:1 contrast ratio. Respectable for a VA panel, but nothing to get excited about. But turn on local dimming on its high setting, and the TV's contrast rockets to roughly 137,000:1. Now, those are some very deep blacks. Sure, there's some blooming even with its 1800 zones. Subtitles create soft halos, and fast-moving highlights are a bit dimmer at their leading edge as the algorithm catches up. At least the TV's black uniformity is nearly perfect with local dimming on, so overall, this TV's black levels are great. Okay, so HDR content punches above its weight class, literally. But what happens when you watch SDR content? It just keeps on being as bright as the sun, that's what. Real scene SDR brightness averages 819 nits, a figure even some premium sets can't reach in HDR. Peak slides again go above 2500 nits, so the picture really slices through reflections. And speaking of reflections, the TV's a bit less glamorous here. It has mediocre direct reflection handling, as you can clearly see your lamp, wall light, or window on the screen. It does reduce the intensity of reflections somewhat, but not much. It's a good thing the TV is so bright then, eh? Thankfully, the TV's coating excels with indirect reflections. Some TVs can sometimes act as a mirror, reflecting the room in its entirety, but not this TV. It really reduces the intensity of ambient reflections, and it does so without any visual artifacts. Oh, and it does all that while keeping its blacks pretty darn deep, as they barely go up in brighter rooms. Plus, its color vibrancy remains mostly unchanged in well-lit rooms. Alright, Hisense, you got our attention. When it comes to colors, the TV is a bit underwhelming in SDR. Sure, like almost any TV, it covers the full range of colors in the Rec. 709 space, and it even has impressive coverage of the wider DCI-P3 space, although not nearly as much as some of the more premium sets. Where it falters is in its coverage of the very wide BT2020 space. Yeah, that color space is rare, and it only really matters if you like to force your TV in its widest color space. But if that's how you like to operate, you could be a bit disappointed here. At least the TV's pre-calibration accuracy in SDR is truly excellent. There are some minor issues with the TV's white balance, but overall, this is a very accurate TV in SDR out of the box. While this TV is a bit disappointing when forced in its widest SDR color space, the same can't be said about its HDR colors, as the TV is excellent here, which isn't surprising considering how bright the TV gets, and how good its contrast is. This means that it displays dark, saturated colors very well, and the same can be said about its bright and punchy colors. Solid stuff. Sadly, in terms of its pre-calibration accuracy, the situation is reversed from SDR. The TV just isn't very accurate in HDR, and the blame lies almost entirely at the feet of the TV's abysmal color temperature. This TV is blue in HDR. Anyone looking at it will notice it, not just purists. That's too bad, as otherwise the TV's white balance is quite good, although, as expected, there's too much blue and brighter grays. There's also a fair amount of tone mapping issues throughout. Unfortunately, it's also not the easiest TV to calibrate. Sure, your calibrator will eventually get it down to perfection, but it might take them a bit longer than they'd like. Well, they might be happy if they're paid by the hour, but you won't. We've got more bad news. You care about HDR brightness accuracy? Well, you might want to avoid getting this TV. Everything outside of shadows is noticeably brighter than it should. Sure, the TV tracks the PQ-EOTF curve much more closely with a standardized 10% window, but that's not indicative of real-world usage, since highlights in HDR content don't take up exactly 10% of the screen. There's a gradual roll-off in content mastered at 4000 nits when the TV gets near its peak brightness, but it doesn't do much, considering the TV over-brightens everything to begin with. Whew, well, that was unpleasant. Thankfully, with image processing, we're mostly back in the green. For now. This TV does a great job with the unholy duo of low-quality content smoothing and upscaling. When watching low bitrate content, the TV removes most artifacts from the feed, and it does it while mostly preserving finer details. Although, you'll spot some slight blurring if you look really close. And if you're feeding it low-resolution content, it also does a great job here, as details are clear and crisp. Although, again, finer details can be a bit hard to make out if you look for them. The TV doesn't fare so well when it comes to HDR native gradient handling. It's not terrible, mind you. You'll just notice some banding in darker greens, grays, and blues. Alright, time for some more negatives. Are you a gamer? If so, you might want to look elsewhere. Surprising, perhaps, as on paper, this TV has everything. 4K at 165Hz and 1080p at 288Hz support on all 4 HDMI ports. Very fast input lag at any resolution and refresh rate combo, and support for VRR across HDMI Forum, FreeSync, and even G-Sync. Oh, and it's super bright in game mode with great contrast. What's not to love? Well, unfortunately, motion clarity lets everything down, especially at 165Hz and 60Hz. Black smearing creeps into panning shots at those refresh rates, especially 165Hz. And at 60Hz, there's some noticeable persistence blur. The TV does fare a bit better at 120Hz, but it's far from good. Plus, enabling VRR produces erratic behavior around 66Hz. We've seen this in the past. The TV seems to be more aggressively shifting pixels when above 66Hz, which leads to a faster response time, but with more overshoot errors. The problem here is that with VRR, the TV might end up rapidly going below and above 66Hz, resulting in the TV's response time shifting in real time. It's noticeable, and it's annoying. This makes the TV a tough sell for PC gamers whose frame rate hovers around 66 FPS. Before we get to our comparisons, we at least need to acknowledge the TV's support of both Dolby Vision and HDR10+, as well as being able to pass through DTS and Dolby formats through eARC. We love it. If all TVs could be like this, it'd be paradise. Paradise, you hear? Alright, enough joking around. Let's compare this TV to some models, shall we? First, the most obvious of comparisons, TCL's QM7K. This year, this comparison is an interesting one, as these two models excel in different ways. The TCL is dimmer by more than 1000 nits in highlight tests, yet its HDR picture is way more faithful to the content creator's intent. But where the TCL takes flight is in contrast, as it's incredibly good for a TV at its price point. This means that these two models are extremely good in a specific dimension of image quality. The Hisense excels in its brightness, and the TCL in its contrast. That said, the Hisense does have a slightly faster local dimming solution, with a bit less blooming. It also has more accurate colors in SDR and in HDR. Finally, its image processing does tend to be a bit better overall. So, advantage Hisense, right? Well, for many people, perhaps, but not for gamers. The TCL QM7K has noticeably faster pixel transitions than the Hisense TV at any refresh rate. This makes it an easy choice for gamers. In fact, TCL has some of the best LED TVs for gamers in 2025, bar none. Last year's Hisense U7N can't match the U75QG's blistering peaks, and it's not nearly as accurate in SDR out of the box. Yet, its PQ curve is much more on the money. The TV is more accurate in HDR, and its pixel transitions are far quicker, especially at its maximum refresh rate of 144Hz. Ultimately, while the U7N seems less impressive outright, it's a more balanced product, and it's also a bit cheaper to boot, at least while it's still available. It's the sensible pick, but still when viewed side by side with the U75QG, it could feel a bit tame. Move up the ladder and the U75QG faces its bigger sibling, the U8QG. And while, as expected, the U8QG is the better TV overall, the difference isn't as big as you'd expect. This is mostly due to how darn bright the U75QG already is. Yes, the U8QG is brighter, but not by that much. The more expensive TV does have noticeably better black levels, however. It's also more accurate in HDR out of the box, but in turn, the U75QG is more accurate in SDR. That said, the real disappointment here is in how bad the U8QG's HDR brightness accuracy is. You thought the U75QG was bad? Well, get ready for wildly overbrightened HDR content. Oh, and when it comes to gaming, the U8QG's input lag is slower than the U75QG, but at least its pixel transitions are faster. Barely. Ultimately, neither TV is a strong gaming pick. Frankly, considering the price difference between the U8QG and the U75QG, it's hard to recommend the more expensive TV here. Stick with the cheaper model if you really want to go Hisense in 2025, or shop for another brand. The Hisense U75QG is a sledgehammer of a TV, searingly bright, stuffed with HDMI bandwidth, and surprisingly affordable for the light it dishes out. Unfortunately, it's a bit too much of a blunt force instrument as it just smashes the content creator's intent, and it can't keep up with the demands of today's fast-paced games. If what you're looking for is absolute brightness at the most attractive price, the U75QG will make you grin every night. However, if you crave brightness accuracy, balanced tone mapping in HDR, and razor-sharp motion, you'll quickly find the grin fading. In those areas, the TCL QM7K or the Hisense U7N look better straight from the box, although the U75QG is the better pick for most people when choosing between it and the pricier, and even less content creator friendly, U8QG. That's our deep dive into the Hisense U75QG. What do you think? Are you bothered by the TV's poor HDR brightness accuracy? Or could you not care less? Let us know. Until next time, I'm Alex from Ratings.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs. Bye. Like what we do and want to be part of it? Good news! We're looking to hire a new lead for our display team. Don't wait and apply today. The link is in the description below. And if you're feeding it low resolution content. And nope.